my friends. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the major arcana cards. These are the first 21 cards of the deck, and major arcana means big secrets. So these are the main players. These are the archetypes and the life lessons that have the most profound impact on us and on our psyches as we journey through life. Tarot tells the story of the Fool's journey, so it makes sense that the Fool is the very first card of the deck. And even though it's the first card, it's represented by the number 0. This is very important. 0 is the void, it is the womb, it is the realm of infinite possibilities. Zeros have a lot to do with potential, and zeros also have a lot to do with the concept of reincarnation, because the circle, the 0, is enclosed. It reminds us that every ending is a new beginning, and every beginning is essentially an ending of some sort. So even though the Fool is the very, very first card in the deck, it's a reminder that life is a series of endings and beginnings. And so even the hero's journey in and of itself as a story, it involves a person leaving home to pursue a mission, to go on a quest, to experience some kind of story arc. But the hero's journey always involves them coming back home at the end and teaching what they have learned along their journey. So it's up for interpretation whether or not you feel and you think that this Fool is about to go off on a new journey, or if this Fool is coming home after just moving through a journey. So like even just looking at that dog at his feet, do you think the dog is jumping up and down because he's excited that like his owner has finally come back home? Or does it feel like to you that this Fool is about to leave, he's about to jump off that cliff, and the dog is like, no, wait, like let's think things through. That's up to you. So symbolically, symbolism-wise, dogs represent loyalty and companionship. The yellow background represents wisdom and enlightenment. The sun beating on the Fool's back represents that this life force energy, this godlike energy, it has the Fool's back. It's supporting their decisions. The fact that they have a little white rose in their hand, it represents a purity, an innocence, a naivete of sorts, but also this reminder to stop and smell the roses from time to time. The fact that the Fool isn't carrying a lot is a reminder that, like, listen, the less you carry in this lifetime, the further you'll go, okay? Because too much physical baggage, too much emotional baggage, it weighs you down. And the Fool is ruled by Aries. This is a card of Uranus energy. This is the free spirit. This is a reminder to let go and let God sometimes. The mountains in the background and even the cliff that he's standing on represent some kind of like danger or risk. So it's an acknowledgement that like, yeah, you're not always gonna feel safe. You're not always gonna be that safe. But so it's up to you to use your own discernment when it comes to taking risks, and understand that like there's always gonna be a risk. Like there's always going to be some kind of risk. And so when the Fool pops up, it is a reminder that like in order to live a deeply fulfilling life, in order to live a deeply spiritually enriching life, you have to go off the beaten path. You have to question what you've been told. You have to like risk looking like a fool. You have to embrace the side of you that is a free spirit. Okay. Whenever a card shows up in the reverse position, it just signifies that this energy is being blocked in some way, shape, or form. So the Fool upright is an invitation for you to trust yourself and act on your instincts and throw caution to the wind. When it's reversed, this can go one of two ways. One, this could be a sign for you to maybe be a little bit more cautious. Maybe there is something that you're missing and this risk isn't worth it. Or it could very well be that you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Ultimately though, the Fool is about self-discovery, okay? Whether it's showing up in the reverse position or the regular upright position, this is about learning how to trust your instincts, learning how to bet on yourself, learning more about yourself. So then when it shows up in the reverse position, typically this does signify you denying yourself an opportunity to get a little bit closer to God, to get a little bit further along your journey. Because what's the definition of insanity? Like doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. The Fool is a pattern interrupter. It wants you to change shit up, okay? But again, with it representing or being represented by the number 0, this is about potential. This is about an infinite realm of possibilities being at your fingertips, all right? And after the Fool comes the Magician. The Magician is ruled by the number 1. From the void, we get a manifestation. From nothing comes something. From the infinite realm of possibilities, now something is birthed into existence. The Magician is associated with the planet Mercury, and Mercury rules over Gemini, it rules over Virgo. This energy is about the intellect. This energy is about the mind. This energy is about information and communication. And the Magician is a reminder that the mind is so powerful. Your mind is your most powerful resource, okay? Just like the Fool, the Magician is covered in a yellow background or has a yellow background. This symbolizes information, it symbolizes enlightenment and wisdom. But the Magician card is also covered with white lilies and red roses. And so this symbolizes the fact that like he is tucked away. He's in some kind of sacred space because he is very mindful about what information he is consuming and what information he is sharing. So he needs a sacred, safe space. Now his one arm is up and his other arm is down because he's a conduit. He's a channel. He's working with some kind of higher source. So his hand is up to receive information, and then the other hand is down to ground it in this reality. And so the Magician is about speaking things into existence. It's about us owning our power and owning our confidence in our ability to create and to co-create, because he's got everything he needs to succeed. On the table, we see a pentacle, a cup, a sword, a wand. These are the 4 elements that will appear again in the minor arcana cards. He also has that little infinity sign above his head, crowning him. His white robes symbolize an innocence, a purity that we also saw in the Fool. Underneath his fancy garment, he was wearing white. But the Magician is wearing that red robe, which symbolizes passion and desire. And so this is a reminder that like, we are here to work with the divine. We are here to manifest. We are here to co-create. And the way we do that is by listening to our passions, listening to our desire, and letting that fuel us. But going back to the fact that like he's in a very sacred space. He took the time to find an arbor, to find a garden that suits him, because he knows that he's only as powerful as the information he receives. And so this is a reminder that like we are all channels, we are all conduits. The mind is powerful, however, the mind is also susceptible and it's naive, and we are a summation of the thoughts that we think and the thoughts that we are told. So when you receive information, it's so important for you to be mindful of that source. When you create things, when you are acting on your desires, when you're acting on your passions, you need a safe space. You need to pull yourself away from the world to tap into your own magician powers, your own manifestation powers. So because the magician is so heavily associated with the mind and the manifestation powers of our thoughts and our words, when it shows up reversed, this is typically when we're doubting ourselves. This is a misuse of the mind. This is negative self-talk. This is not feeling good enough, not feeling adequate enough. The magician reversed is imposter syndrome, or it can be a very manipulative energy. This can be a very, very trickster energy. Mercury in general gets a bad rep for being the trickster planet, but it's because he's so good with his words. So for better or for worse, there's a lot of power in whatever the magician has to say to you. Also symbolism wise, that snake around his waist that's acting as a belt, that snake is also a symbol of Mercury. But yeah, the magician, it's about the mind. And the magician being number one, this is like literally a single track mind. There's no room for conflicting feelings. There's no room for complicated feelings. There's no room for multiple perspectives. This is a very, very straightforward masculine energy, like divine masculine energy. The next card, Miss High Priestess, represented by the number 2, this is when duality becomes part of the conversation. This energy is when two things can be true at the same exact time. Okay, so we're gonna move on from the magician to the High Priestess. The High Priestess is ruled by the moon. This is Pisces energy. We can see that she is cloaked in blue. She is sitting in front of a pillar marked B, which is black, and a pillar marked with the letter J, and that's kind of gray. And she's also sitting in front of a bunch of pomegranates, and she's got the moon at her feet. She's got the Torah in her lap. She's got a cross on her chest, and she's got the triple goddess symbol as a crown. So the High Priestess is actually sitting in front of Solomon's temple, which is referenced to in the Bible, and there's a ton of like Christian biblical references throughout the course of the tarot. Even the magicians like white lilies speak to the resurrection of Jesus and like this idea that rebirth and resurrection and like life continues on even after death. So the High Priestess, she is the keeper of the secrets, okay? This is when our subconscious becomes part of the conversation. The magician represents our conscious mind, again, masculine energy. The subconscious is associated with feminine energy and the moon. The two pillars that she's standing in between represent the fact that polarity and contrast are necessary for us to experience creation. So on this pillar there's a B, on the other one there's a J. The B and the J stand for Boaz and Jachin, and I'm sorry if I butchered that, but those are just pillars that were in King Solomon's temple. But again, in regards to polarity, like in order for us to experience light, we must experience darkness. In order for us to know pleasure, we must know pain. In order for us to learn and uncover truth, we must experience the opposite of truth. And so King Solomon's temple was a place where people went to debate. It was a place where people went to have very intellectual conversations. And so the High Priestess is very, very wise because she has been exposed to a bunch of different forms of wisdom. She's heard a bunch of different kinds of conversations. She's wise because she understands opposing sides of an argument. You know what I mean? But at the same exact time, she's very stoic. She's not speaking up. She knows not to waste her time talking to certain people. Her level of understanding surpasses the intellect. And yet, even though she's very blue and watery and has a lot to do with our intuition and understanding information that is beyond the veil, even though she's very, very, very connected to the ethers, the fact that she's sitting on a cube is symbolic of the idea that her spiritual knowledge is grounded in reality. She is a very, very, very grounded presence. Even with the fact that the Torah is in her hands, she has some kind of spiritual text that is grounded in this physical reality. She teaches us the importance of melding spiritual beliefs with the present circumstances that we've been handed. You know what I mean? So the cross on her chest is a symbol of protection, and then that crown, the triple goddess imagery, is the full moon being sandwiched in between the waxing and the waning crescent. So the waxing crescent represents maidenhood, the full moon represents motherhood, and then the waning moon represents crone, or being an older woman. And so this is feminine energy through and through. You could argue that the high priestess is most likely a lesbian, or very, very fruity. And she shows up reversed. This is us. This could be a sign of us not trusting ourselves, us not trusting our intuition. However, this can also just be a indication that you're ungrounded, unbalanced. You're either too spacey, too caught up in spiritual truth and a little too flighty, or you're too grounded and you need to lean into your intuition a little bit more. But regardless, whenever the high priestess comes up reversed, it's a little imbalance. And also this could be a misuse of magic. This could show someone with shady intentions or someone that practices black magic. The high priestess reminds us that not everything is meant to be shared. Not everything is meant to be understood by everyone. The pomegranates behind her, that was also mentioned in the biblical description of King Solomon's temple, but also there are historians and researchers that argue that maybe in the story of Adam and Eve, it wasn't an apple that was referred to, that in the original text, instead of apple, the word pomegranate was used, but also maybe regardless of whatever fruit it wasn't a piece of fruit that was eaten. You know what I mean? Do with that information what you will. But at the end of the day, the high priestess is about receptivity. It's about taking in information and not doing much with it, just holding space for it. The next card, the Empress, is about creation. The Empress is when the numbers 1 and 2 make 3, and the sperm and the egg create life, okay? So the Empress is associated with Taurus and Libra. This card is ruled by the planet Venus, and we can see the symbol for Venus on a heart-shaped shield right next to the Empress. She is sitting in the middle of nature. She is surrounded by wheat, which is a very useful, very multifunctional kind of crop. She's also sitting in the forest. Again, there's a yellow background. The symbolizes wisdom, information. And what's interesting is that like, so the high priestess is also like information, but the only yellow here is that by her feet, right? Okay. So the information that she knows isn't as like widely known by other characters in the deck. Okay. So the Empress is also about receptivity. She is Mother Nature. You could argue that she's pregnant or sitting in a very comfortable position, relaxed and like ready for a male suitor. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? The 12 stars on her crown represent a connection to the cosmos and the 12 zodiac signs that exist. Her scepter is a symbol of her power. The cushions that she's sitting on reinforce the idea that she's very relaxed, she's very comfortable, and on her gown are pomegranates from the High Priestess card prior. She also has 7 pearls on her necklace, and so the 12 stars are connected to the 12 zodiac signs, but the 7 pearls are connected to the 7 celestial bodies that exist: the sun, the moon, Venus, Mars, Neptune, the rest of the planets. And so yeah, this energy is about nurturing oneself, nurturing others, and nurturing ideas into existence. This is about fertility. This is about creativity. The Empress is the mother. She is Mother Nature, but at times, in my opinion, her energy can be way more youthful. And sometimes when she comes out, it's like, okay, like, this is an opportunity for you to acknowledge that you're a bad bitch and you're killing it and you should be proud of yourself. But also sometimes her energy comes out very, very, very like grandmotherly. And so it's up to you. It's up to your own interpretation of how you work with Empress energy. But essentially, she reminds us that the more you take care of yourself, the better you can take care of others. And whenever she's reversed, this is an opportunity and a sign to rest, relax, take better care of yourself, and also be mindful of how you are either over consuming and being too indulgent right now, or are you not taking enough time to indulge in your 5 senses and indulge in the things that make you happy. This energy is so creative, and it's a reminder that to be human is to be inherently creative. You have an unlimited source of inspiration, and by acting on your creative ideas, you have the opportunity to nurture them into existence and to take on this maternal role when it comes to any kind of creation, not just children. Okay? All right, so after the number 3 comes the number 4. After the Empress comes the Emperor. If the Empress is creation, the Emperor is here to protect that creation. Think of the Empress as a triangle, 3 points. And the triangle also like refers to the womb space. But so when we add a 4th point, this creates a square. This creates structure. This creates protection. The Emperor is divine masculine energy, okay? He is ruled by Aries energy. We can see the Aries rams on either side of his throne. And actually, he's got some more rams up here. He's got a very, very rocky background, an orange background. He's cloaked in red. His beard represents the fact that he's very old and wise, and actually that specific cloak that he has thrown over his shoulders, matched with the armor on his feet, it's symbolic of the fact that he's a leader that has been at war and come back. Like, he's a leader because he's been a soldier. He's a leader because he worked his way up. He's a leader because he's been in the trenches, he knows what it's like, and he's a good leader because of his lived experience, because he's been a soldier, because he's been on the front lines. And so now he serves to protect his people. He serves from a very, very wise place, but he's not afraid to get his hands dirty, okay? He has a scepter too, but he also has this like ball in his hands that is very much up for interpretation. You can interpret this to be a grenade. You could interpret this to be a globe. It's really quite controversial. Looking at my notes over here. But yeah, he's an energy that's very, very self-made and very empowered. Oh, the thing could also be a globe or a compass or some kind of ornament. But in any case, this energy is prepared. It's very passionate, and this is about trusting yourself. And so sometimes like trusting yourself and acting on your Aries instinct, it can be a little rebellious. This energy is about standing up for yourself and standing up for other people, okay? So now when it's in the reverse position, this can be a sign of control issues. This can be significant of selfish energy, power-hungry energy, the need to be a lot more open-minded. This can represent someone who doesn't want to take on accountability or responsibility. This can be a sign of toxic masculinity or like a waste of potential. And the Emperor reversed usually shows up when we're blocking our own creative flow in some way, shape, or form, or we're not being as protective over the things that we want to create. You know what I mean? There's a lack of structure, a lack of protection, a need for us to get a little bit more serious about our goals and about what we are responsible for. Okay, so after number 4 comes number 5. We have the Hierophant. And so in numerology, 5s represent change. And usually it has to do with some kind of conflict or some kind of obstacle that leads us to creating change. So the Hierophant is the very first card in the tarot where we see multiple people. We have a Pope in the middle and then 2 clergymen looking up to him. Just like the High Priestess, like we got those 2 pillars. But this time the 2 pillars are the same color, and the Hierophant is wearing a crown, but it's the biggest crown we've seen thus far. Like the Empress and the Emperor were also wearing crowns, but the Hierophant's like obnoxiously has a very obnoxious crown. Okay, so interestingly enough, also like the High Priestess, he is a religious figurehead. He's a pope, he's a priest. He is sitting on a box with those 2 keys, and he's got little crosses on his feet, and those checkerboard stripes on the box are also significant, and I'll talk about that in 2 seconds. But essentially, he is associated with hierarchies. Yes, religion, but also government. This is associated with Taurus energy. The Hierophant has a lot to do with Taurus, and so did the Empress. So the Empress represents Taurus's connection with nature, and then the Hierophant represents Taurus's connection with monetary value and power and giving and receiving of information and philosophical values. This energy is about devotion. This is about commitment. This can be about marriage and union and solidifying your connection to another in the church. This is about authority figures. And yeah, so the Pope in this card, the priest, he's about to speak. That's why his hand is up. He's silencing the room. He's about to share something, but because of those like keys and the locked box he's standing on, we can decipher that he's not about to say a whole lot, okay? He's not about to tell the whole truth. And the high priestess, her pillars being different colors, it reminded us that two things can be true at once. The truth is complicated. The Hierophant is here to deliver a singular gray truth. And then those two clergymen are there to receive his truth and take his word as Bible, as gospel. So with the checkerboard imagery, this is so slight, but I think it's important because in general, checkerboard imagery usually means two things. One, it has to do with mind control, and two, checkerboard imagery typically reminds us that like life is a game. Life is supposed to be a game. Life is supposed to be fun. But if you don't know life is a game, then you get played. And that's where the mind control concept comes back in. I dare you to pay attention to how much checkerboard is used nowadays, specifically in like the media, modern advertising, and like the music industry, like lots of checkerboard imagery, which like ties back to like Alice in Wonderland imagery. But because the Hierophant is about authority figures and it is about tradition, whenever this shows up for you in a reading, this can indicate the fact that like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Whenever the Hierophant shows up, it can indicate needing to learn from a mentor, learning from a guide, a guru, a teacher of sorts. And it's also a reminder that like before we can break and challenge the rules, we have to learn what the rules are, okay? When it shows up in the reverse position, this is a sign to question authority, question your commitment to something, question what you've been taught. This can also indicate someone rejecting help. This can indicate being too independent, too close-minded. Like ironically, your skepticism, your refusal to accept tradition can also manifest as a very conservative mindset. But yeah, this in a like relationship reading, if someone's showing up at the Hierophant reversed, this indicates a lack of commitment, usually, typically. Yeah, I think that's what I got for the Hierophant. So this is the point in the tarot story where tradition, structure, it takes a turn. And we're handed this narrative by a priest, by a pope, by an authority figure. And the next card that comes is the Lovers. And so this is the tale of Adam and Eve that priest was teaching us about. But the Lovers, it's not just about partnership and love and relationship. This is about choices, and this is a reminder that love is a choice. The Lovers is about choices because this is where we have the opportunity to follow our heart and follow our desire if we want to build something with someone else. Okay, so in this card, like I said, Adam and Eve, you don't have to interpret them as that. Essentially, this is feminine energy, masculine energy. It's another rendition of polarity. But now this is polarity in the flesh. And then in between the Lovers, we have that phallic looking mountain. But the mountain, not only does it represent like sexual energy and a climax of sorts, but it also represents like passion and ambition and the fact that like a relationship, just like life in general, like there's ups and downs, and like part of the fun is when like energy builds. In this card, that mountain being there, it's about energy building. There's an angel overlooking Adam and Eve, and so it's up for debate whether or not this is like Angel Gabriel, Angel Raphael, or just like Mother Nature. It's a very earthy looking angel. And then that sun being there again, just like in the Fool card, the sun represents truth, it represents God, it represents warmth, and there being some kind of support. Behind Eve, we have a tree with some apples, some fruit again, and also that snake. And then behind Adam, that tree is set on fire. So that's significant of like his like lustful desire. He's also staring straight at this woman, and the woman is looking up towards the angel. The woman is aware of the angel's presence. The man is not. So going back to the idea that masculine energy represents our conscious mind, it's our one-track mind, it's our waking mind. It's our mind that's more focused in the physical reality and the flesh of this world, okay? But the subconscious mind, the receptive mind, the feminine mind. So not only is she looking at the angel and like we can assume she's receiving information from the angel, but like that snake is also in her ear. And in the Bible, it's the snake that tells her to give Adam the apple, right? But in Eve giving Adam the apple, that metaphorically represents the subconscious giving information to the conscious mind, right? Eating from the tree of knowledge. And so the Lovers is where we make decisions based on the information that we have at our fingertips. This is where we come into alignment with ourselves, with a higher self, with a higher knowing. And then whenever it comes up in a reading upright, this can be about romantic partnerships, but 9 times out of 10, this is about you coming into alignment with a deeper truth about yourself. In the reverse position, this speaks to misalignment. This speaks to a partnership that isn't in your highest and greatest good. This can speak to feelings of loneliness. The Lovers reversed can pop up during like moments of rejection, infidelity, cheating. I keep wanting to say Hierophant. The Lovers reversed is about insecurities. This is about like not seeing yourself clearly and not seeing the other people in your life clearly. But also reverse is just about not listening to your heart. All right, so after the Lovers, after number 6 comes the Chariot. Number 7. So in the Lovers, our subconscious feeds some information to our conscious mind, and we learn a little bit more about ourselves. We're coming into a greater harmony with ourselves and therefore a greater harmony and balance with other people. Now the Chariot is about forward movement. This is about willpower. This is about getting your subconscious and conscious mind on the same page. We have 2 different sphinxes that are driving this charioteer's vehicle. And so in this card, like this person is wearing a lot of armor, so we can assume that this is a warrior of sorts. The Chariot is associated with Cancer energy, and Cancer is the crab. This is about carrying your home on your back. This is about protecting yourself. This is about making decisions too. Number 7 in numerology is all about decisions and seeking higher wisdom. So we can see that the charioteer is leaving a city behind. He's on the prowl. He is moving forward. And the canopy draping above his head is covered in stars. And so this represents the fact that he is guided by the cosmos. They are being guided by some kind of higher wisdom. And there's a lot of like hieroglyphic symbolism on the person's outfit, and their armor has some moons on it. And yeah, even though this card is depicting a chariot, there are no physical reins. And so that's why this card is about willpower, it's about mind power, because this chariot has to get these two sphinxes to go where he wants them to go without the ability to physically control them. It's all about mind control. And the black sphinx represents our subconscious mind, our feminine energy. The white sphinx represents the conscious and the masculine. Let me see here. Yeah, so this is about emotional and mental balance. This is about facing your fears and choosing to act on faith, taking a leap of faith, knowing and trusting that you're highly protected. And also this speaks to the idea of inertia, like objects in motion tend to stay in motion. 7 in numerology indicates a pivot, an adjustment, a resilience, an active creation of one's own momentum. So the Chariot card is associated with Cancer energy. Cancer is about our emotional baggage. Cancer is about where we come from. Cancer is about the things that we have been handed. And the reason why the Chariot is associated with strength and like willpower and forward movement despite obstacles is because the Chariot refuses to be a victim of its circumstances. The Chariot chooses to master its own emotions instead of being a victim of its emotions. Okay? So that's why this card is about forward movement. And the little like emblem with the wings, it's significant of the idea that like God gave you a pair of wings. You have your own chariot, okay? You have your own way to proceed forward. You have some kind of tools in your toolbox, but it's up to you whether or not you choose to use your wings. It's up to you whether or not you choose to proceed forward. When the Chariot shows up in a reading, this can mean like actual travel, like physically moving from a place to a different place. This can indicate trips, but essentially this is you making a decision that's going to serve you in the long run and choosing to actively create a better future for yourself and leave something in the past behind, okay? When the Chariot shows up reversed, this can be a period of stagnation. This is a lack of movement. This is frustration. This is disappointment. This is some kind of delay, some kind of travel plan getting canceled, or just there being some kind of issue. This can be a loss of self-control too, and being like overly emotional about something to the point where you find yourself in a very depressed or anxious place. But essentially the Chariot reversed is a blockage in moving forward, all right? The Chariot, just like the number 7 in general, this is about options. This is about decisions. This is about intentions and deciphering what we want to do, what is actually for us, and figuring out where we want to go next. The 8th card of the tarot deck is the Strength card. 8 is about power. 8 flipped on its side is the infinity symbol. And so when we move into a vibration of the Strength card, there is a lot of karma and power and stability that is created and cultivated here. The Strength card is associated with Leo energy, okay? In the card, there's this woman who is wearing a white dress. She's got that little infinity symbol crown and she's covered in flowers, and she is sticking her hand into the mouth of a lion. And it's widely agreed that the woman in the card represents the sign of Virgo. And so her white dress speaks to a purity and innocence, a gentleness, which is also reinforced by like the flowers in her crown. And this card is a reminder that true strength isn't brute force. There's something about the Chariot card that is very, very assertive. This speaks to brute force, where the Strength card, ironically, because when we think of the word strong, we don't think of gentility and a softness, a gentleness, but the Strength card comes along to teach us that true strength is patience. True strength is trust. True strength is vulnerability. For that woman, if we zoom out a little bit and really think about this, for a woman to for anybody to stick their hand into the mouth of a lion, into the mouth of a beast, it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of patience. She has to be very, very gentle with that thing. All right? So this card is about compassion, it's about respect, it's about forgiveness, it's about generosity. The human in the card represents our mind, our logic, and the beast, the lion, represents our shadow selves, our more primal instincts, okay? And so that infinity sign is also a nod to the idea that nothing is separate. We are all one. So that means that even this woman and this lion, they're connected. They're intricately, divinely connected. They come from the same source. They will return to the same source. This is also a reminder that pure intentions are powerful. And my interpretation of the Strength card will always be that you are a lot more powerful than anything you are afraid of. Your pure intentions are more powerful than whatever you're afraid of, okay? When the Strength card comes up in the reverse position, this is a sign of a lack of confidence, impatience. This is power struggles. This is a need for someone to regain their own emotional strength. This is also a sign to be mindful of pride. And interestingly, the Strength card reverse can also equate to physical sickness, physical sickness and or anxiety and worry. And the Strength card in the reverse position is also a reminder that you can't force anything into existence, and if you do, it's going to lead to burnout. All right? So Strength is about trust. Strength is about patience. Strength is about forgiveness. Strength actually is about putting our ego to the side, becoming friends with it, understanding it, becoming friends with our shadows, understanding our shadows, hearing them out, okay? And when we do that, when we can befriend the parts of ourselves that are a little bit tougher to tame, that's when we step into the wisdom of the next card, which is the Hermit, which is number 9. So in numerology, because 9 is the step right before 10, this is the period of integration right before we totally complete a cycle, okay? Number 9 is about unpacking what we've been through and fully processing and fully digesting any lessons that we've had to move through. The Hermit card is associated with Virgo energy. This depicts an old man and a wise man who's standing at the top of a hill. And so what's interesting is that the Hermit is moving through pitch black darkness, but the imagery on the card is kind of green. And this is because the light that he's carrying, which is essentially his own inner wisdom guiding him, it's bright enough so that the background of this card doesn't have to be black. And later on in the tarot, with the Ten of Swords, for sure, yeah, Ten of Swords, got that black background, Nine of Swords, black background, that's a very, very intense image. And the usage of black in the tarot, at least in the Rider-Waite tarot, it's very rare. And so when you see it, you're like, oh, it's supposed to be jarring. It's supposed to evoke a certain emotion. The Hermit is moving through pitch blackness, but it's being represented as this green hue. It's softer. It's not as scary. Because he's been through some shit. He's been through scarier shit. And he isn't afraid of things that used to scare him. You know what I mean? So The Hermit card represents trusting our inner wisdom, seeking inner wisdom, solitude. The Hermit lives to serve God, to serve others. His staff protects him. It's like physically helpful for him to have that thing, but it's also a connection between him and the divine. Just like how a lot of the cards that we saw previously, including the Magician, they were all the Hierophant, they were carrying scepters of some sort, right? Even the Emperor and the Empress. And so having that staff, having something to hold, it does symbolize grounding, some kind of divine wisdom. Okay, his gray cloak represents protection and wisdom, and he's a testament to the fact that you can be a student and you can be a teacher at the same exact time. All right, the Hermit card shows up when it's time for us to trust our lived experience, when it's time for us to do things in a way that honors how far we have come. The Hermit card shows up when it's time to step into the role of a teacher, okay? The Hermit card shows up when it's time for us to take on a role of authority. The Hermit card also shows up when it's time to seek solitude and carve out some alone time, but for the sake of integration, for the sake of self-reflection, okay? When it's reversed, this can mean one of two things. This can mean that like we've been in hermit mode for too long and it's time to come out of isolation, or we haven't had enough alone time and actually it would be beneficial for you to carve out some time to be alone. The Hermit reversed can also be like analysis paralysis. This can be a sign that you need to stop overthinking. You need to talk to somebody else, get something off your chest. This is also a sign to practice what you preach. The Hermit card is about advice and it's about wisdom. So when it shows up reversed, this can also represent you or somebody else needing to take your own advice, needing to trust your own internal wisdom, and needing to fully process the truth of what you've been through. And if we see the Hermit reversed one too many times, it really represents like never fully learning a lesson and never fully letting the information sink into our brains. Where the Hermit upright understands the fullness and the complexity of what they've been through. They understand everything happens for a reason, even if they don't understand the actual reasons. You know what I mean? There's a resilience, there's a willingness to move on, to make peace, and to recognize patterns when they see them. All right, so from the 9, we move to the 10. From the Hermit, we move into the Wheel of Fortune. So the Wheel of Fortune is associated with Jupiter, and the imagery is kind of overwhelming at first, but basically there's 4 different creatures in every corner, and each of these creatures are associated with a zodiac sign. These are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, and Leo. But they're also associated with the 4 evangelists in the Bible, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So here we have that woman holding a Bible, and so that's the sign of Aquarius. The phoenix holding the Bible is Scorpio. The bull reading the Bible, that's Taurus. And then that lion is Leo. All right, so in the middle of the card, we have the actual Wheel of Fortune. This can also be seen as the Wheel of Reincarnation, the Cycle of Life, the Circle of Life, also the astrological wheel. But the word tarot is spelled out in between a bunch of Hebrew alphabet letters, T-A-R-O and then T again. There's a sphinx sitting on top of the wheel holding a sword. And as we're going to talk about in a little bit, swords in the tarot represent logic and intellect and the power of our thoughts, the power of our words. There's also a snake off to the side. The snake has to do with mercurial energy, Mercury, but also it's a nod to Kundalini energy and awakening and enlightenment. Also because the snake is yellow. So that's a lot of like enlightenment, awakening imagery. And the wheel is being held on the back of this jackal. And the jackal is like a cunning, clever, trickstery kind of energy, okay? And so I like to think of the Wheel of Fortune as like divine timing. That's what this energy is. This is about like the fact that time is always moving, the wheel is always turning, and going back to the idea that the number 10 represents a cycle, a completion, a learning of a lesson. We can think about the number 0 and the number 1. So the Wheel of Fortune is a combination of the Magician and the Fool. However, 10 isn't 0, 1, it's 1, 0. So it's manifestation, it's the power of the mind grounding infinite potential, not the other way around. This is like the mind's ability to conceptualize infinity, and the mind's ability to conceptualize infinity leads us to this like wheel of reincarnation, okay? The Wheel of Fortune is a tricky energy. It's weird. And like the basic bitch definition of the Wheel of Fortune is good luck. People hear the word fortune and we go, good luck, good fate, money. But this energy is about karma, good and bad karma. Just the fact that everything is always constantly in motion. So when you pull the card in a reading, all it means is that your circumstances are going to change. Your circumstances are changing. There's a level and a layer of karma here being at play. Jupiter, yes, it's a planet that's associated with abundance and expansion and joy, but ultimately Jupiter is about philosophy. Jupiter is about growth. Jupiter is about expanding our consciousness. Jupiter is about self-acquired wisdom. And so I invite you to work with your relationship to the Wheel of Fortune and like, what does that mean to you? What does like self-acquired wisdom mean to you? Wisdom that you've had to learn the hard way. Wisdom that you've had to learn in a very hands-on way. Like that's what the Wheel of Fortune is. And what does that mean to you? So when the Wheel of Fortune comes up reversed, this is like a blockage of motion, a blockage of momentum, a blockage of movement. This can represent like bad karma, bad luck, or just bad timing, wrong timing. Now is not the time to proceed forward. The Wheel of Fortune can also be a sign of like stillness, or reversed can be a sign of stillness. So not necessarily like perceiving the fact that you're being told to stop. Like instead of perceiving a lack of movement as a bad thing, this can just be an invitation to chill out, take a pause, take a rest. It's not time yet to move forward. But the Wheel of Fortune reversed can also be you or somebody else seeing themselves as a victim of their circumstances, seeing themselves as someone, or just feeling so out of control over your own fate, okay? And I guess you could also make a case that like when the Wheel of Fortune's reversed and like maybe you also get like the Emperor reversed, like this is someone who is not trusting the timing of their lives. Like this is someone who's comparing themselves too much to other people. This is someone who just needs to like surrender more, and this is also just someone who's committed to their own misery, you know what I mean? Versus if the Emperor came upright with the Wheel of Fortune reversed under this kind of circumstance, like I would argue that this is a person who is learning how to empower themselves and make the most out of a situation, even though they feel like the obstacles that they've been handed and the life circumstances that they've been handed aren't too great. You know what I mean? So no card is an island. Whenever you're like reading If you are really having a difficult time trying to figure out what the heck the message is, keep pulling cards, keep asking questions, and yeah, kind of cross-analyze the symbolism that comes up. So as we move from the Wheel of Fortune, which this card is a really important one. This card is a really big turning point, and this card is about self-actualization. Okay? Like this is really, really key to the rest of the major arcana. From the Wheel of Fortune, we move into the Justice card. And so Justice is about balance and fairness, and this is about karma too. So the Wheel of Fortune is still kind of personal. This is about our personal journey. This is about our personal narrative. This is about our personal karma. When we step into the Justice card, this is about cosmic karma. This is about the fact that like everything is fair in the eyes of God. Like everything is working itself out. In our own personal lives, in the way the world works nowadays, things seem ass backwards and nothing seems fair. And why the fuck is there so much suffering on this planet, right? This is a very personal lens of reality. In the eyes of something greater, in the eyes of something bigger, in this lifetime, we're working through the kinks of existence. We're working through the consequences of creating so much karma over these past couple generations, okay? Stepping into the Justice card, this is about Libra. This energy is about like truth and purity of intentions. In Egyptian culture, the goddess Mahat would after you passed away, the Egyptians believed that Mahat would take your heart and put it on a scale, just like that little scale in the hands of Justice, and she would put your heart against a feather. And if your heart was lighter than a feather, then you got to proceed to heaven. But if your heart was heavier than a feather, then there was some kind of price to pay. You were not admitted into heaven. Okay? Usually justice has a lot to do with the actual justice system. So in a reading, if this card pops up, it can like represent a court case. This can represent like a divorce. This can represent some kind of legal battle. Okay, so Justice is this very like gender neutral but kind of feminine person sitting down, and they have scales in one hand and then the sword of truth in their other hand. Similar to the High Priestess, there's two pillars with like this little like cloaked veil thing behind them. The red of their robes represent passion and desire, but the green symbolizes growth, personal growth. And so this energy is very, very mature. Their little foot is sticking out and their shoe is white, and that white imagery represents purity. All of that to say, justice is very integral. When this energy shows up, it's time to be honest. It's time to look at the facts. It's time to weigh the pros and cons and make a decision that best serves everyone involved. Okay? So when the Justice card comes up in the reverse position, this is an indication that you or the person you're reading for is ignoring the facts. There's something that you need to give more consideration to. There's some kind of missing evidence. This can also be an indication of unfairness, indecisiveness, imbalance. This energy in the reverse position can also be really sneaky and can indicate cheating or stealing of some kind. Justice reverse can also be too rigid. This can be confirmation bias. This can be too biased of an energy, too judgmental. And maybe this can also manifest as paying too much attention to the facts and not taking your own lived experience or personal intuitive feelings into consideration. But in any case, justice reverse is a sign of imbalance, unfairness, and a need to really analyze the puzzle in front of you before making a decision. Okay? So from 11, we move on to 12. From the Justice card, we move on to the Hanged Man. And so justice is about decision making, deliberation, doing what's best, what serves everyone involved, and like really cutting through the bullshit and getting to the bottom of things, getting to the truth of the matter. The Hanged Man card represents a shift in perspective. Okay, this represents being forced to surrender, being forced to let go and let God. This guy has no control over his circumstances. If anything, this card shows up when it's time for us to make a sacrifice. And so with the Justice card, understanding this energy to be a court ruling, a decision that is made that will serve the greater good. Usually that means that the people involved have to make some kind of sacrifice in order for all parties to benefit. You know what I mean? So this card shows up when it's time for us to surrender to our circumstances. So the Hanged Man is a card that is ruled by Neptune. And in this card, we can see that a man is hanging upside down from a tree, but he looks pretty comfortable. He's not uncomfortable, okay? Some people believe that like this is an analogy for Odin, the god Odin hanging from the tree of life. But regardless, this little dude is gaining wisdom. He's gaining enlightenment, which is why his crown chakra is lit up with all that yellow energy. So because this card is associated with Neptune, and Neptune rules over Pisces, this energy is about spiritual truth and escapism and illusions. And like, essentially, this is a reminder that like, we can escape the pain of life through seeking spiritual knowledge. We can escape the pain of life through prayer, through meditation. Also, we can escape through sleeping and numbing, and other forms of coping, right? That's like other forms of coping are always available to us, but there are healthy forms of escapism, or at least it's a reminder that like escapism can be anything. And creativity, creative expression, this is also a form of escapism. Creation is both a form of escapism and a confrontation. The Hanged Man is a very creative energy, but it also reminds us that we can only receive inspiration. Usually we receive inspiration in moments of rest. Before we can receive a breakthrough, before we can receive a download, before we can receive an idea, we need to carve out the space so that we can facilitate and be a container for that idea, for that spiritual hit of information. So in the reverse position, this can signify a victim complex, kind of similar to that Wheel of Fortune reversed. This can signify being stagnant for far too long, and now it's time to get up and get moving. This can also represent a resistance to fully surrendering and fully letting go of whatever's not in your control. The Hangman reverse can also signify a stubbornness, some control issues, some self-righteousness, and in all honesty, the Hanged Man reversed, it kind of feels like someone who has been numbing for so long or has been distracting themselves from how they feel for so long that to fully surrender, to fully let go, to fully stop using, to fully stop distracting themselves, it feels too painful. And when the hangman comes up, regardless of whether it's upright or reverse, like there's a little bit of pain here, but this energy is an invitation to take that pain and turn it into wisdom and use it to transcend, use it to help other people, use it to cultivate some kind of spiritual truth. Okay? After the hangman comes the death card. After we take the time to sit with our pain, find wisdom in it, choose to transcend our circumstances, after we choose to see our circumstances from a different point of view, that leads to an ego death, that leads to a death of sorts. Death is about change. This is about metamorphosis. This is about alchemy. This is about moving on. This is about like understanding that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Everything just gets transmuted, okay? I think it's really dope and really cool that like death isn't the last card of the tarot deck. Like I've already touched base on like the idea of reincarnation and this idea that life is so much more intricate and infinite than we can possibly comprehend as humans. But death is just a stage in this journey. Death is only the 13th card, okay? And so in this card, there's also a lot happening. We have a skeleton wearing a suit of armor on a white horse, and that white horse has some intense red eyes. That skeleton is also like waving a flag with that white flower. In the background of this card, there are two pillars with the sun setting, and we're gonna see those two pillars again in the moon card later on. All right. But there's also this priest who could possibly be the guy from the Hierophant. And we also have a man who is presumably deceased down here, as well as a couple children, okay? And now the only person in this card that doesn't seem to be too phased is this child, okay? This older, possibly older child is looking away from the dead body, but the priest is like bargaining with this angel of death. Okay? The kid not being too phased is a reminder that like kids are so much more psychically, spiritually in tune than we'll ever understand, because they're closer to that source energy that we come from. And so that kid in this card understands that like death is just a necessary part of life. Change, endings, evolution, transformation, it's just a necessary part of life, okay? No one gets out of here alive. No one is immune to death. No one is immune to change. And so the fact that there's a lot of water in the background of this card also speaks to the heavy emotional charge that we carry when it comes to change, when it comes to grief, when it comes to letting go of people, places, and things. All right. And also the Hierophant, the priest being here, also symbolizes the fact that it's his job to provide a sense of comfort for people who are mourning, for those that are curious about the afterlife. But ultimately, this energy teaches us that in order to experience something new, it's gonna cost us something old, okay? Death is associated with Scorpio. Scorpio is all about healing. It's about change. It's about constantly shedding your skin and like undoing layers of resistance and fear. Scorpio energy is about like truly working through intimacy issues, fears around trust and loss of control. And nothing is more confronting than when you first start experiencing death and the death of loved ones in your life. But whenever we see this card, it's a reminder that change is the only constant in this life. And when we resist change, it's a form of self-sabotage. All right? Now, when the death card pops up reversed, this typically signifies a stagnant energy. If you see the death card reversed, this is usually a sign that something needs to be changed, something needs to be reevaluated, something needs to be worked through, and your resistance to it is stopping you from healing and growing. Okay? The death card reverse can also signify us having a tough time fully letting go of something or someone that we have outgrown. This can also be a fear of the future or like a mistrust of the future. And we can also see the death card reversed when we're being too protective of ourselves and of our egos. Again, that has a lot to do with like clinging on to something instead of letting it go. Whatever we're clinging on to, it's because it's familiar, whether that's a relationship, whether that's a job. You already know by the time you see the death card reversed that like you've outgrown this thing. It's time to take off the training wheels. It's time to do something differently. And remember, your new life is always going to cost you your old one. Okay? There's always going to be a little bit of a trade-off. Now, we move from death to temperance. The temperance card is associated with Sagittarius energy. This is the 14th card of the tarot deck. And temperance is about navigating and harmonizing two different extremes and actively creating balance, similar to the Justice card. But this is more hands-on. This is about moving through like the highs and the lows of life and learning how to cultivate a sense of patience, learning how to cultivate a sense of faith. So on this card, we have an angel, and angels are not male nor female, they're hermaphrodites. They do not subscribe to the gender binary. And this angel is standing with one foot on land, one foot in the water. They're also having these like two cups that they're pouring water from. And one cup contains hot water, the other one contains cold water, and they're literally tempering the water. That orange triangle on the angel's chest represents the Holy Trinity. It represents divine creation. It's a nod back to the Empress card and the idea of number 3 being a very, very creative energy, divinely creative. And then the square around that triangle is a nod to the Emperor and this need to protect that divinely creative energy. If we divide 14 by 2, that brings us back to the Chariot card, which is number 7. And this card was about actively choosing to move forward, asserting your will, choosing to not see yourself as a victim of your circumstances. And in a similar way, temperance is about healing. It's about tempering our emotions. And this also speaks to the Sagittarius influence of temperance, because Sag is the centaur. So it's half horse, half human. The horse part speaks to the primal, instinctual, animalistic side of being human, right? And then the man part of the centaur speaks to our higher mind and Sagittarius's ability to seek knowledge, seek philosophical understanding. Temperance is always a reminder to ground ourselves in this present moment. That like, yes, there's so much that you want to do and there's so much that you've been through, and this energy is very, very empowered and it's very ambitious, but there's a need for you to ground yourself, center yourself. Temperance is about centering oneself in this present moment. This is about feeling good enough right here, right now, and not needing to accomplish X, Y, and Z in order for you to feel good about yourself. Okay? This is a reminder that you're always actively creating your future from your present moment, and so it's important for you to stay grounded, stay present. Just like the Chariot card, this is about making change. This is about adjusting your course of action, but doing so from a very, very wise, patient, practical means. Okay? This is about bringing opposites together and creating magic. This is about looking at your pain, looking at your wounds, looking at whatever part of you is dying and grieving it, holding space for it, and choosing to make a beautiful life for yourself regardless of all the darkness that you've had to move through. Okay? When it shows up reversed, this is a sign of not being present, not being patient. This is living in some kind of extreme way of being. This signifies imbalance. And whenever we see the Temperance card reversed, it's because something wants to be healed. Something wants to be worked through. Something wants to be acknowledged. There's a wounding that wants to be acknowledged. There's something that needs to be shifted. So Temperance is about healing. It's about navigating the extremes of this world and tempering our own internal worlds. After the Temperance card comes number 15, the Devil card. So in the same way that this angel's wings took up the span of that card, now we're getting a different perspective, a different pair of wings. The Devil card is associated with Capricorn energy. Okay? And there's a nod to the Lovers. Also, the imagery is very, very similar. And so in the Devil card, we have another like Adam and Eve like character, but this time they are chained to one another. There's a form of confinement, there's a form of condition here. And yes, the devil kind of looks like the angel from the Lovers card, but also the devil looks like the magician with the way that its hands are positioned. So the devil is also a reminder, similar to like the magician in the reverse position, that the mind is our most powerful tool. And so in the dark, our imagination runs rampant and the mind can get the better of us. This energy is very obsessive, it's very controlling. So just like the Lovers, this is about choices, but when the devil shows up, it feels like there's a lack of choice, there's a lack of freedom. If the Lovers represent alignment and a love that feels like whole, a love that feels good, this is a toxic situation. All right, so the devil itself is half goat, half man, right? And he's got bat wings, he's got the pentagram of the pentacles that we'll see later on, but his pentagram is flipped upside down, okay? So his connection to the ether is a little bit more sinister. And the symbol in his hand is actually the planet Saturn's symbol. And so Saturn rules over Capricorn. Yes, this card speaks to control issues, addiction, codependency, fears, feeling stuck, feeling attached to something. But ultimately, this energy is about the downsides of ambition, the darker sides of ambition, the darker sides of material wealth, and material success and being too attached to some kind of definition of success. The fact that the devil is holding like this torch of fire, but it's downwards, represents the fact that like he's hiding the truth. Fire and light symbolizes truth and information. So with the fact that his is turned upside down and he's hiding it, it represents a distortion of truth. Yeah, the devil wants us to stay still, stay stuck, stay stagnant. So because of that, whenever the card pops up, it tends to represent a period of stagnancy, feeling stuck, feeling chained to a situation, feeling chained to a relationship, feeling chained to a very conditional situation. This also represents temptation, okay? Good or bad temptation, right? Like the devil can show up in a very sensual, like sexual way. Similar to the Lover's card, Adam's tail is on fire and Eve's tail is fruit. So that refers back to the fire of lust and like desire to the fruitfulness and the fertility of the woman. But the fact that like both of these guys are they're wearing their own devil horns, I think that's important. I think that signifies the fact that like, yes, they're chained to this devil, but the fact that they have their own horns means that they've taken on his truth. It means that they've been manipulated, they've been deceived. They themselves are now doing the devil's bidding because they've taken on his word as gospel. You know what I mean? So anytime this card shows up, it really just represents like you or the person you're reading for, like being in a period of deception and being blinded by something that you want. Okay, when the devil is reversed, this signifies some kind of liberation, some kind of breakthrough. This represents freedom. This also represents like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And like when I see the devil reversed, it feels like a breath of fresh air. It's like, okay, like we're almost there. The devil reversed can also signify someone refusing to save themselves, someone refusing to help themselves, someone who understands that they're in a toxic situation but choosing not to get out of it, okay? And the devil reversed can also be a sign of like self-destructive tendencies, but I would, based on the reading, based on the context, I think the devil upright would be more of a self-destructive kind of vibe. So after the devil, after we become exposed to some form of manipulation, after we become exposed to some kind of toxic situation, comes the Tower. All right, we move from card number 15 to card number 16. A couple months ago, I was on Instagram and I saw a meme that said being a tarot reader isn't hard. The hardest part is hiding your facial expression when you see the Tower. And that shit's so funny. That was so funny. Because it's so true. And I don't know if this is true for everybody else, but like, I never get used to seeing the Tower. Anytime this shit pops up, I'm always a little taken aback, always a little shook. And it's because the Tower represents an abrupt change, a dramatic change. This is about breakups. This is about breakthroughs. This is about breakdowns. The Tower is ruled by the planet Mars. Okay, and so on this card, we have that black background, which is a little intimidating. We have a gray tower, and there's lightning hitting this tower. Now, the tower itself is falling, it's crumbling because it wasn't built on a strong foundation. So when the Tower shows up in a reading, it symbolizes an ending, a change, a breakup, a breakthrough, because something wasn't built on a solid foundation. There was a crack in the foundation that we didn't pay attention to while building this relationship, while building the situation. The lightning represents insight. It represents truth. And the crown being knocked off of this tower also represents like an ending of tradition, like a killing off of an old king. You know what I mean? Some kind of authority being thrown out the window. Now there's two different people that are descending from the tower. And so one dude looks like he's being pushed or was pushed and is free falling off of the tower. But the other dude is a little bit calmer. And so we can assume that he jumped from the tower. And so anytime we see this card, it's similar to the death card. It's like, okay, listen, something is changing, something is crumbling. You can fight the current, or you can help yourself by leaning into this change and not resisting it. Again, the tower is number 16, and if we divide 16 by 2, we get the number 8 and the strength card. The strength card was about control. The tower is about a lack of control. Okay, this is about the rug being ripped out from underneath you. This is about the destruction of false ideas. This is purification. This is divine protection in disguise, all right? This is a reminder that like rejection is protection, and whatever isn't meant to last in your life, whatever isn't built on truth, whatever isn't built out of love, when something like that collapses, it's a blessing. It's a blessing in disguise. So the Tower card is a nod to the mythology of the Tower of Babylon. And so the Tower of Babylon is a story used to explain why we have a bunch of different languages nowadays. And so the story goes that back in Babylon, people wanted to get closer to God. People wanted to get to the kingdom of heaven. And so they built a physical tower and they climbed up this tower, and they did it by working together. God looked down at these silly people trying to get to his kingdom, and he struck down their tower. And as the tower fell apart and as the people fall down, they lost the ability to speak with one another. And they all, from there on out, spoke different languages, because God wanted to make sure that they were never able to work together again to get to him. Yeah, so basically God was like, haha, silly kids. What is it? Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. Like, you can't physically get to heaven. It's a spiritual thing. It's a metaphorical thing. Okay, guys? The Tower card can also represent establishment and government and authority. This can also have to do with our comfort zone. And getting kicked out of one's comfort zone. All right, when the Tower card shows up for us, it's a sign to let the universe do its thing, really, and figure out what part of this equation is in our control and figure out what part of this equation is out of our control. When the Tower card shows up reversed, this can go one of two ways. But in my own experience, whenever I see the Tower card reversed, typically it signifies an ending that was a long time coming. The Tower card upright tends to be very abrupt. It tends to be very aggressive. So when it's in the reverse position, this is like a slowed down effect of the Tower. This is a slowed down ending. This is a delayed ending. This is energy that has been built up for a while now. And so this ending, this breakthrough, it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, okay? And yeah. So essentially the Tower card is about receiving some kind of information, receiving some kind of news, having some kind of insight that totally rocks the foundation of a situation that you're in. And this destruction, this chaos, it gives way to the next card, to the Star card. This is one of my favorite cards. The Star card is associated with Aquarius energy, and this is about ultimately like hope and healing. After the chaos and the shock value of the Tower, the Star card comes along to remind us of what's actually important, okay? On this card, we have the Water Bearer, but we also have the 7 stars above her head, which represent the 7 celestial bodies. And this is a nod to like zodiac mythology. And the fact that there's so much power in mythology and there's so much power in beliefs. We also have a little bird in the tree behind her, and this is the ibis bird, ibis. It's spelled I-B-I-S, and it's an Egyptian bird that was said to be the messenger of the gods. And so between the stars and the bird, this symbolizes having a higher perspective, having a more holistic vantage point. And when we have a higher perspective, when we have a little bit more knowledge and life experience under our belt, it helps us make decisions, and it helps us cultivate a sense of hope and faith. And so with the Star card, this energy is about feeling unique and feeling special and enjoying your own energy and taking stock of how far you've come and learning how to not take yourself for granted. Because of that Aquarian influence, this is about understanding your uniqueness as a person and understanding how much value you add to the collective just by being you. This energy is about perceiving and approaching the future in a new way. This is creative, innovative, artistic energy. This is about astrology. This is about mythology. That big ass star is Sirius. It's the North Star. It represents our like north compass. It represents our intuition. And the fact that like she's got one foot on land, or like one leg crouched on land and another foot in water, kind of like the Temperance card, but her foot is like it's like on top of the water. And so that's very Jesus-like, and it represents the fact that like she's special, she's blessed, she's highly favored, she's here on a mission. The Star card, also like the Hermit card, this is about wisdom and it's about guidance. So when it's in the reverse position, this tends to signify a lack of hope, a lack of faith, a lack of trust. This symbolizes a lack of guidance, a lack of wisdom, a lack of clarity, and also like purposeful confusion. Like you're not supposed to have all the answers right now. You're not supposed to be thinking too much about the future right now. The Star card reversed can show up whenever we're future tripping too much and we're getting too in our head about the future. All right. And so whenever we see it reversed, this is a sign to rest, relax, stop trying to control, stop trying to expedite your healing, and instead just trust the process. All right, on a whole, the Star card has a lot to do with trusting the wisdom you're receiving and moving forward in a way that brings a sense of like hope to other people. The Star card and Aquarius energy is about being a living example, and by serving other people because you are honoring your own uniqueness and your own path. So the Star card is where we begin to see ourselves as gifted, as someone who has something that they can serve humanity with, okay? There's a little bit of like personal empowerment, a little bit of reinvention, a little rebranding that happens with the Star card. And then after this comes the Moon. So after we understand ourselves and the role that we play in our communities, we have the Moon followed by the Sun. The moon is our subconscious. It's our fears, it's our intuition. It's who we are when no one's watching. Those two wolf-like, dog-like creatures remind me of the tale of two wolves that I believe stems from Native American culture. And it's the story of a grandson walking up to his grandfather saying, like, "Grandfather, I got two wolves inside of me that are constantly fighting. One is greedy and one is loving. Which one wins? How do I navigate this?" And the grandfather goes, "Whichever one you feed will win." And so that speaks to the duality of human nature versus human nurture. Is mankind inherently greedy or inherently loving? And maybe both, but which wolf will you feed? Okay? The moon card pops up when it's time to trust our intuition and learn how to decipher what is an intuitive thought and what is an anxious thought. The truth is, your intuition is always gonna whisper. She's gonna be real quiet. She's gonna make you pay attention to her. She's gonna make you practice listening to her. You gotta work for your intuition. Anxious thoughts are loud. Anxious thoughts are obnoxious. And anxious thoughts are a lot more obvious than your intuition will ever be. Okay? So that moon card is a nod back to the High Priestess card. This is about our subconscious. This is about Piscean energy. This is about the moon. And the moon is a reflection of our internal landscape. And like I said, the Death card also contains and shows those two pillars. In the Death card, the sun was setting or rising in between those two pillars, right? But now the moon is here. Now there's a little bit more uncertainty. Because all of these creatures are very awake and they're stirring underneath the moonlight. This can represent having a hard time sleeping at night, or avoiding your thoughts, avoiding your emotions during the day. So at night you can't fall asleep because you have 1,000 things on your mind. The moon card can also pop up when we're having very important dreams, when it's time to pay attention to what our dreams are showing us and telling us. But yeah, the moon card is also a very confusing, foggy, moody energy. It's constantly in flux, it's constantly changing. This can literally represent imbalances in our hormones. The moon reversed tends to represent deception, lies, and secrets. When the moon shows up reversed, it's a time to ironically stop looking for answers and instead start getting a lot more objective about the situation that we're in. This energy has a lot to do with not wanting to face the truth of a situation. And so because of that, if you see the moon reversed a lot, or if you read for someone and the moon reverse is coming out a lot, it's a sign for you or that person to find a objective third-party person to talk to. This can be a sign to get a therapist, to go to therapy, to find a doctor, to work through something with someone else. There's a need for you to get a different perspective on the situation that you're in. There's a need for you to find a safe space too, to explore your emotions, to dive into your fears. You need a safe space to dive into your subconscious, essentially, okay? And the moon reversed is like a loss of control. This is losing touch with reality, losing touch with who we really are and what we really need, okay? But the good news is that after the moon comes the sun. Even after the darkest night, the sun will still shine. The sun will still rise. And so the sun is number 19. We can reduce 19 to 10. 9 plus 1 equals 10. And so again, 10 represents completing a cycle. The sun card is about joy. It's about bliss. It's about celebration. It's about feeling a sense of accomplishment and pride. And on this card, we got a white horse, we got a little naked baby. That naked baby is holding this like red thing, this banner. We got some sunflowers in the background, and of course we have the sun. This card is ruled by the astrological sun, and the baby speaks to this vulnerability. The baby speaks to truly being seen, truly being in the present moment and feeling safe, letting go and being yourself and being true to yourself, staying true to yourself, putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. This is about innocence. This is about clarity, fulfillment. This is Leo energy, so it's very creative, very expressive. That red banner is about promoting something that we're proud of. It's about waving your freak flag. It's about not caring. It's about showing off your hard work. Okay, it's about celebrating how far you've come. I love sunflowers. Sunflowers are probably my favorite flower. And so during the day, the sunflowers, they turn their faces up towards the sun. And then when the sun is gone, the sunflowers will actually like turn towards one another to seek comfort and seek warmth with one another. And so typically the sun, it represents like needing or confirming that you are surrounded by love and support. Typically when the sun card is upright, this is a sign of feeling that sense of love and support. When it's in the reverse position, there could be a need for you to surround yourself with more like-minded people or to cut out people that just don't have your best interest at heart. Whenever the sun card pops out, like it truly is such a good sign. It's such a positive omen. This represents the truth coming out, or you feeling safe enough to express your truth, you feeling creative, you feeling good, you feeling generous. And even in the reverse position, like it just means that you, for whatever reason, can't fully access the amount of joy that is available to you right now. Like with the sun reversed, like you can interpret this as like the sun setting. So maybe there is some kind of ending, but it's a temporary ending. Maybe a truth is being delayed, a truth is being blocked. There is some kind of lack of joy, lack of clarity. But if you sat with this, if you let yourself be grateful for what is working, then you would have the ability to flip the sun upside down. But the sun reversed, it can feel like something's missing. Okay, this can also manifest as like low energy because there's something that's like sucking your life force energy that you need to pay attention to. The sun reversed can also manifest as like a prideful, arrogant energy, or like a self-destructive energy, like someone who is never really satisfied. And so that can be like a slippery slope, you know what I mean? So listen, I love the sun. I love the sun card. I love the generosity, the warmth, the excitement, all the love that is available here. But the truth is that like once the sun comes out, there's no avoiding it. Once the truth comes out, there's no avoiding it. And so that's why after the sun card comes the judgment card. After the sun card comes Judgment Day. Okay? This card is associated with Pluto. This card is an angel appearing from the clouds, possibly Gabriel, calling out to a bunch of dead bodies and resurrecting them. Like this energy is crazy and very intense. The Judgment card is a call to action. The Judgment card wants you to get off your ass and to do something about your situation. This is like a karmic call to arms. The Judgment card shows up when we can't afford to keep ignoring something. So the mountains in the background are very like rocky, and actually they look like the Fool card mountains, and also the Hermit card. definitely a very different mountain than what we saw in the Lovers, right? But so the rockiness of like the Hermit Mountains, the rockiness of the Judgment Mountains, this represents the fact that like the journey, that journey that the Hermit card was on, like it's behind us. It's the backdrop. We've been through some high highs, we've been through some low lows. We're not walking on the mountain anymore. We've learned certain lessons, we've graduated, we've reached a certain point where we cannot afford to live life and do things the way we used to. You're maturing. You're taking on a lot more responsibility right now. Physical responsibility and spiritual responsibility, okay? When we see the Judgment card, you're being called to act in a way that's a lot more empowered, and you're being asked to hold yourself a lot more accountable. This is a period of vulnerability, self-awareness. This is a period of honesty. This is a period of integration, okay? And ultimately, the Judgment card brings a sense of acceptance that gives us permission to release and forgive and move on. The Judgment card is about discernment and decision making, and because it's associated with Pluto, this has a lot to do with power struggles and power dynamics and dealing with unavoidable change. Like I said, Judgment is ruled by Pluto. Pluto is Hades. He's the god of the underworld, the god of our psyches, the god of our shadows, the god of our fears. Pluto rules over the sign of Scorpio. And earlier I was talking about how Scorpio is all about healing and transformation and undoing, unlearning, transmuting our trauma. So when the Judgment card is in the reverse position, to me this is an energy of like procrastination, running away from responsibility, running away from reality, running away from the truth, resisting change, like refusing to do something that you know you need to do. The Judgment card reversed is very much an energy of if I don't see it, then it's not actually happening. This can be denial. This can also be holding on too tightly to something, refusing to like let go of a situation that isn't working anymore. Also, that's just like the Death card reversed. Refusing to move on from something that isn't healthy. And also the Judgment card reversed can truly be like not understanding how to proceed forward, not understanding, knowing what needs to be done. But regardless, the Judgment card is always going to involve some kind of forgiveness, some kind of release, and some kind of acceptance. So after the Judgment card, we have the very, very last card of the major arcana, and that is the World. The World card is number 21, and this represents victory, success, completion, achievement, progression. This card is ruled by the planet Saturn. And Saturn, just like that Devil card, it represented ambitious energy, right? But the Devil was a low vibrational, being obsessed with material wealth, being obsessed with material success kind of energy. On the flip side, this is about emotional fulfillment. This is about emotional success. The main character on this card is a dancer, and she is endlessly spinning and dancing herself into manifestation, into creation. 21, if we take that 2 and that 1, it reduces to 3. 3 is a nod to divine creation and that Empress energy, that Holy Trinity, the triangle, the womb space. And even on this card, we got that like giant wreath, which is the womb. It's a portal. It's a reminder that every ending is a beginning, every beginning is an ending. And then also, just like the Wheel of Fortune, we have the 4 fixed signs again, We have the Aquarius water bearer, we have the Phoenix representing Scorpio, got the Lion representing Leo, and Taurus, the Bull. Yeah, so this card really does build off of a lot of different cards that came before it, and like even the wands that are in her hand, they look identical to the Magician. That Magician's wand, right? But she has two of them. And so she took the manifestation power of the Magician and she worked in that duality of the High Priestess. And again, she's a dancer. So she intricately dances herself into existence. She's dancing through that portal. Just like the Fool, she's not taking things too seriously, but she has come so far. All right, again, this is the energy of Saturn. Saturn is about restriction and limitation and taking advantage of your resources to create something of a legacy. The World card is about legacy. This is about reputation. This is about creating something, creating a name for yourself that outlives you, that surpasses you as a person, okay? This energy, it symbolizes completion and the ending of something. Like it symbolizes you taking your hands off of something and that thing having a life of its own. Even if that's your reputation having a life of its own, okay? This is self-mastery. This is ascension of some sort, okay? This is alignment. This is fully grasping a lesson and being able to move on, all right? So when we see the World card reversed, it tends to represent some kind of unfinished business. It represents a lack of closure, okay? The World reversed can represent burnout, can represent miscommunication, it can represent plans falling through or your plans needing to be readjusted. But in any case, this represents like not being able to feel a sense of achievement, not being able to feel a sense of completion. And whenever you see the World reversed, it's important to check in with like whether or not you're wasting your time with this situation, okay? But again, because this is Saturn energy, you have to work for what you want. If you want that sense of closure, you have to give it to yourself. If you want that sense of achievement, you got to give it to yourself and you got to figure out how you can do that. But on a whole, the World is such a beautiful, beautiful pat on the back, okay? It represents moving on. It represents doing a little dance. It represents being proud of yourself for how far you've come while still like just not taking things too seriously. Okay. All right, friends, that was the major arcana, and I hope that was a satisfying introduction to these cards. Moving forward, we're gonna jump into the minor arcana. So these guys were the big secrets, these were the main characters, and now we're gonna jump into the little secrets. The swords, the cups, the wands, the pentacles. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.